Hello, everyone. Welcome to Gen AI Talkin' 10. I'm Brad. He's Satish. We started in the last segment talking about terms that you need to be familiar with in this world of Gen AI, and we only got about through half of the list of terms that we wanted to cover. So, Satish, let's finish that. We left off talking about fine-tuning models. We were delving into that, or you were delving into that, and that was really helpful. Why don't you pick it up from there?
So, Brad, really glad to have this second part. So let's start with prompts, right? Or prompt engineering as it is otherwise known. A prompt refers to a specific question you ask of the large language model or the AI program. Now you do that because you want it to generate a specific response or output. So if I want to ask it, a specific question about what kinds of use cases are there for supply chain, right, out in the market, then I can ask that specific question. I can get even more specific, for things like you can say, for a food services business or for a widget manufacturing business, you could get specific, right, within your prompt or your question. The prompt can be as little as a few words, could be sentences, paragraphs, or even several paragraphs. I've seen prompts that go on for pages, right? But I've also seen prompts that are one-liners. We as human beings, from a layman's standpoint, we usually use a smaller prompt than a larger prompt. But in businesses, in enterprises, you see them wanting to get very, very specific on what they need from the large language model. So their prompts tend to be paragraphs, even several paragraphs long, right? Well, now let's talk about vector databases. I think this had come up in the previous session we had. A database, we all know what databases are, right? But the vector database, which is special to Gen AI, is used to store vectors. In a regular database, you're storing data. Now, a vector database stores vectors. You'll remember that we had talked about how Gen AI or any AI is actually looking at these as numbers, right? So every word or token, as Brad had mentioned, is a word, right? Could be a word, could be a phrase, could be a paragraph. But when AI takes that and wants to store it and wants to refer to it, it converts it into a very long number. That's probably the simplest way to explain this, right? So that's a vector. And why vector versus storing words into the database? It's much more efficient for the computer to actually look at these as numbers and refer to these numbers or vectors when it's comparing what you had asked in a prompt versus what it already has in the database, right? Vector databases are used in conjunction with LLMs to optimize getting a more specific response that is more business specific from the LLM, right? Because without a vector database, remember, the LLM might not know anything about your organization. So you're providing context using a vector database. Now let's talk about RAG, or you hear this term called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Now this is very much related to vector database in the sense that you're using a vector database to provide the LLM with your organization's own data, because remember we had said you don't want to change the LLM itself because it's a very complex task. What you instead want to do is to add this data from in a vector database and tell Gen AI to look at both the LLM and the vector database before it responds. Why do you do that? Well, because you want that response to be contextual to your business. You don't want it to be generic, right? Which is what the LLM typically will have. And so that's why you use retrieval augmented generation to actually make the response you get from the LLMs much more specific to you or your business.
So Satish, a company may load their policies and procedures or product information, things like that, in a vector database in order to make Gen AI come back with outputs that are more specific to their company, to how they conduct business. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And we see this with our customers, right? And the interesting thing here is you can there are various techniques to get more out of the LLM. RAG is one of the very common techniques.
Hmm.
But let's end on a couple things, right? Hallucination. You hear this term always, and hallucination is nothing but a plausible yet incorrect response from an LLM in response to your prompt. So why would a Gen AI platform hallucinate? Probably because it doesn't know the answer. It's like a teenager or even a child, where if a child doesn't know the answer, it'll probably make up an answer which sounds plausible, yet it's wrong or incorrect, right? So that's hallucination. Bias is where, we as humans tend to be biased, whether we like it or not. We all are biased to an extent, right? Because we are responsible for training the AI, our bias tends to, kind of carry on into the data, which can lead to unintended consequences, right? The last couple of terms is governance.
Can I stop you there? Can I interject one question? With regard to hallucination, are there times when that can be a positive? So I'm thinking of using Gen AI to create a slogan for a campaign, create a new, write up a summary of a very long, complicated document that is really hard to get through. So in those cases where I really need the creative genius of Gen AI, essentially it's hallucinating in certain cases to create that kind of content. So isn't it true there can be a positive side of that? It's not all bad.
It's not all bad. Yes, they can be for the creative side, but organizations want certainty with data, right? So for those cases where it's the creative side for brainstorming and things like that, sure, you can let the LLM hallucinate because the questions you ask might not know the answer to within the data it has. So it will make up stuff. And that's okay because you're looking for that. But in most cases, organizations want certainty around the responses it gets, right? Last two things, just because I know we are running out of time here. We talked about bias. Governance refers to the guardrails you're providing, right? You have hallucination, you have bias, you have, these LLMs making up things sometimes. So you want to protect against that. And there are various ways to do that. And we as Blue Prism provide a really good governance framework so that when customers use AI, it's safe, it's secure, it's even, it can scale, right? All of that is possible, using the Blue Prism framework. The last thing, and this is an exciting thing to end the session on, right? You'll hear the term AGI or Artificial General Intelligence. Now, this might sound scary at first, but this is where artificial intelligence reaches a point where it matches or surpasses human intelligence and human capabilities across a wide range of cognitive tasks. Some people will say we can reach AGI in a matter of a few years. Some say that it can take decades. We always tend to overestimate the short term and underestimate the long term, as they say. So I think that could play a part here. So AGI can happen someday, but that day is probably quite far away.
As we've seen, it's probably sooner than we think, right? Every forecast these days with regard to AI seems to come in a lot faster than we anticipated because technology change is just at a different pace altogether.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Satish. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing all of you on the next Gen AI Talk in 10.